pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have public participation. Do we have anyone that's on the meeting, Jen, that would like to speak? Is Jen with us tonight?
She is. Jen, do we have anybody for public participation?
Okay.
She's turning things up. There we go.
Sorry, it appears someone turned off the volume on his computer, it appears, so I just turned it back up. Let me see, someone just said something. All right, so no one has posted in the chat that they would like to participate. However, let me quickly ask, is there anyone that would like to participate in the Google Meet that has anything that they would like to share with the board at this time? No, it does not appear that this time we do.
Okay, well, hopefully, we'll definitely have it at the end of the meeting. So at this point, we'll move on to budget. So I don't know what you had for updates on that, either Brian or Ruth Ellen.
Well, I just put in a more recent update of the worksheet, which is not, it's not exactly what should be, because on my end, my expenses go up and down, but I have Ruth Ellen backing me up with the spreadsheet of every purchase that she's okayed that was not encumbered, and it's actually very small.
And which,
So far, yeah.
which
So-
one is that in the folder?
It is, if you look at Board Freeze Workbook.
Okay.
So with that, along in my superintendent's report,
Right.
I'd referenced that requisitions amounting to $32,341.90 have been approved as of Friday afternoon. This leaves $874,156.11 in our remaining, which is apart from the 1 million. The 1 million is set aside. And so Brian is looking at what we have actually sent checks on, and I'm looking at what's in the pipeline that we know has been approved. And so we're kind of taking it from two different directions to make sure we have a cross-check on where we are. So I will continue to give you the update that way. Anytime, I'm the last approver on the system, and as I go through, I'm making sure that I map all of those back to what line and where it's come from.
So what you're saying is there's $32,000 of receivables that haven't been paid yet,
Yes.
besides payroll?
Yeah,
Right.
yep. They are now in the system as
They've been
POs
approved,
that have been
requisitioned or
approved.
whatever, but
Yep.
they have not come due yet.
correct.
And the other budget item that's in there, what I did was I updated the FY22 budget after the Budget Committee made their small changes, their $12,000 and change, and I updated it, and that's also in there as well, which is a very minor change from the original one that we brought to it.
Tim?
If I can direct to Brian. Brian, can you update the rest of the board on the public hearing at the Budget Committee and the results?
Yep, basically the Budget Committee was happy with the budget we presented. The only issue we had was a minor mistake that on my part where we had behavioral services has used contracted services for the middle school and the high school. And what I did in the middle school accidentally was plan for retirement, FICA, and I believe benefits as well. So
So
that
there
was, we basically just took those out. Didn't affect anything quality-wise, as we didn't give up anything. It was just a clerical error on my end.
So the amount was $12,452.
Yep, okay. good.
Over two lines, right?
Yes.
Three
it was
lines.
3 lines.
3 lines.
Yep.
And that was the only change that was made. Otherwise, they were satisfied with what we came up with for a budget.
Yep. Just got a
Go ahead, Tim.
question on Saturday. For the public, Saturday's the deliberative session, starts at 9 o'clock here. As a board, do we want to decide what, if any, warrant articles board members are going to present? Is the superintendent going to present the entire budget at deliberative? How do we want to proceed with that process? I've seen it done both ways in the past.
And typically, and it doesn't matter to me who's presenting on which, I will have all of the warrant articles put into a PowerPoint so that they're projected as well.
Yep.
And we will have copies available for people to pick up as they come in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue as the chair addressing the questions initially, if I can answer them, but I may have to defer to a staff member who's more qualified to answer, like say if it's a number on the line, I may have to refer to Ruth Ellen or Brian or so forth, but I certainly don't have an issue of trying to answer the question or make sure it gets directed to the right person to answer.
Do you want to present the article and speak to it initially? Do you want one of us to do that? I think that's more what Tim is
Yeah,
going for.
what is the format of our meeting going to be?
Yeah.
And typically, how has it been done, Ruth Ellen?
Typically, the board has had me do it, although I'm fine if you would like to do so. Either way, typically, the moderator will read the warrant article, and then he'll turn it over to
All right.
our table. I can speak to it, you can speak to it.
So I guess I'll open it up to the board. What would the board like to do? Would they like to have me present or Ruth Ellen as far as the first wave?
And if there are ones that, we need to, this one's yours, this
Right.
one's mine, that's fine too. We're starting with Article 3.
But the
so.
first two or three are just...
The first
they
two
just get moved.
articles
They just get
are
moved and-
Zip.
the election and then presenting the
Right.
materials for audit, which is kind of a rubber stamp. So
Right.
it's Article 3 that we actually present.
Yeah, I'm okay with doing it if the board wants me to, or that's why I open up to the board. What would you like to do? Tim?
Doesn't matter to me, I just want to be organized when we go into deliberative session. I mean, the superintendent's done it in the past. I don't have a problem with her presenting it. If we need to pipe in a field questions, I think we could do that, but tonight, I just kind of want to be on the same page of what our plan is for the deliberative session.
Okay, so remotely, we have Josh and Stan, and Joel is not in attendance at this point, but we'll try to be later in the meeting. So your thoughts, Josh or Stan, regarding who should initially present, myself or Ruth Ellen?
If you're comfortable doing it, I think that would send a great message that the board is behind the budget.
Stan, your thoughts?
I think probably one person should do it. It doesn't really matter who, just to be really clear and to move the process along.
Okay.
Well, let's take the heat off of the superintendent. If you feel comfortable doing it, then it's the board's budget, let it come from the board.
Okay.
There is one issue that I'd like to see before deliberative put out, and that is the warrant's been posted. People are seeing the tax impact and they're starting to panic. And some of the people that are seeing the tax impact and panicking aren't necessarily watching the meetings or in tune to the process that's going on. I think it would be beneficial on the SAU Facebook page if we could say the warrant's been posted, this is the impact, this is the step the board's taken to mitigate that impact, and as far as where it's going to go from there, we really won't know until we have a state budget.
Right.
The good news that I'm seeing in the federal legislation with the state side of the budget is my understanding is if they accepted CARES Act from the federal government, our educational funding from the state has to be an average of the last 3 years. So what we're looking at now isn't that average of the 3 years, so potentially it's only going to go up.
Unless they count those one-time payments as not part of the average, which I've seen them do too. I'm hoping
Yeah.
not. I like your version better.
Yep. Yeah.
But because those were one-time payments, they may separate it out.
Yeah.
I hope not.
So there is light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know when we're going to see that light, a potential light at the end of the tunnel. But I'd like to get the board's feedback in that, and rightfully so, there's panic out there when people see the $3 number, and we knew that there was going to be panic out there, but if we can kind of offset some of that, and I commented on one of the posts tonight.
Yeah, I think if we can be as informative as possible, in some ways, there's only so much we have control over. But if we give them all the information that we can, similar to what we've done with the Budget Committee, hopefully they'll at least have some confidence in that we're doing our best under the current funding sources or deficits that we're seeing from the state.
Well, and I know that last year you did quite a bit of messaging.
Yeah.
Do you want to work together to craft that to?
I
put it
can
out?
help you with just a brief statement that's non-factual that we can put out. My concept is after
It
delivery.
is factual.
That is factual.
Right,
Yeah, you said non-factual.
factual. I meant factual.
Charlie's eyebrows did a quick wiggle.
I mean, my concept is after deliberative and before the ballot, we'll have the same conversation of getting information once we have a solid budget of
Right.
what that process is. But I can do a blurb that you can look at, wordsmith it, and put it out, and I think that'll alleviate, particularly with our elderly. That's a huge impact, elderly and fixed income. It alleviates some of those fears.
Okay. I think maybe the other thing too, we may want to let people know kind of the format, because we are going to be, we will be able to do it socially distanced.
Yep.
We will have a room for those who are unable to wear masks. We'll have a space for them right behind the gym, so it will be part, and we will have full audio visual for them as well. And then we'll have this as overflow in case we have such a crowd, we can't manage the gym. I'm thinking that's probably not going to be the case, but I'm going to be prepared because I don't want anybody to feel like they can't come.
Yeah.
We can easily socially distance 150 in the gym. We did it this summer. And that's 150 besides those who are at the head table. And then we will see how many we have from there.
But what has been the typical attendance?
Between 100 and 150.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm assuming we'll be fine in the gym with the spaces that we have. But we should be able to accommodate, and if it looks like we need to have additional viewing, we'll have additional viewing, and we'll have runners with wireless mics if need be. I do have some volunteers, so.
The Budget Committee has a meeting posted at 8:30 the morning of deliberative. Do we want to post a school board meeting just in case, convene the meeting, recess, and go to deliberative or not recess, convene the meeting, take a break for deliberative, and then reconvene the meeting if we have to make any changes on any recommendations to warrant articles, et cetera?
We certainly can.
Yeah, I think if we post a meeting
We may not-
before that, just so if there's any late-breaking issue that the board wants to discuss, something that is brought up on social media, something about a budget committee member comes to us and says, hey, I've got an issue that I didn't see before, that we at least have an opportunity to convene and say, hey, this is what, a couple things that came up that we need to be prepared to discuss.
So I guess my two questions are, what time would you like that posted for, and will that be an in-person meeting? Because,
I would say yes, it would be in-person meeting
Okay.
based upon, I'll be there. Josh has indicated to me he'll be there. Tim will be there, and I don't know about Josh or Joel or Stan, but
Okay.
that would be enough to constitute.
okay, because if we have this set up as overflow, I can't turn around and set it up as a separate meeting, because that's going to be live feed back into the gym. So I need to make sure that we've got, if I need to have a separate room set up with a different way to do it, then that's another layer. Not impossible, I just want to make sure I know what I need.
Budget Committee's doing it as a public meeting. I think we should too, and it saves us from,
Yeah, they just stand in a corner of the gym.
Right.
And do theirs. So But we haven't ever had where we're not in person for it either.
Right.
So,
Okay. Yeah, I would say we probably would just need,
so 8:30?
I don't even know if we need that much time, but, I mean,
Well, I'm also gonna need time to make sure I've got everything set and get back in there, so.
okay. Yeah, so maybe 8:30. So if we have a 5-minute, 10 minutes, and it gives
Okay.
people to
I'll be here at
reposition.
7, but you don't have to be here that early.
I'll be here at 8:30.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be at the budget committee for 8:30, so if we could almost, they're gonna convene, absent any issues, they're gonna recess, so we could kind of do the same thing if there's no issues.
So you want to do before or after?
I guess we could even do a joint one if you wanted.
I don't have an issue with that either.
No, but if you haven't let them know that it's a joint one, then you can just do it at the same time and more or
Right.
less in the same space.
That's what I
but,
mean.
Yeah, just keep an ear on each
Yeah.
side. Okay. All right, so I'll post it for the gym then?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want to
8:30.
post it at the gym, or do you want to post it here?
Remember the gym, we're going to
Typically,
require masks and everything in there, right?
typically in deliberative, we're
I
in
can't,
here.
it's a voting session, I can't, yeah. Typically, we do in here, but if it's public and you've got people,
Right. I say we just do it at the gym, right where our table is.
Okay.
Okay,
Easiest.
that's fine.
We
okay,
just do it there, and we'll seat it at the end, and we'll just have
yeah,
it.
because we're on one side and they're on the other side, and
Right.
there's enough space, so, okay,
If somebody wants to listen, they'll be able to, and,
right. Pick a meeting to listen in on.
or both.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Anything else on the budget? So it appears that we're on track.
We're on track.
We are on track.
Okay. No
I'm
surprises.
No catastrophes.
no big surprise, and it's not going to throw the budget for a big loop. We have had an issue with the buses. I don't know if you want me to bring this up here or under new business.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Bus 10, which is our bus that is the most overexpended this year,
It's our problem child.
is now in need of potentially another $4,500 worth of work. We've already put well over 8 into it. This would put it up to 13 range.
And what does it need?
It needs turbo, what was it? It has to do with the diesel injectors, and I will go back, I have it written down. But at this point, with the mileage on it and the fact that it is now starting to become a bit of a cash pit,
And
we
what is-
have our other-
What is the mileage? So,
it's over 100,000 miles on it.
just broke in.
What I want to do, what I'd like to do is at this point, not put the money into that one. I have a sister bus, which is 8 to that, same mileage, less mileage, is now in good repair. Everything else right now is functioning. I would like to perhaps use this one for parts for 8 if we need to, but I'm going to end up right now with more buses than I have drivers who can drive them anyway, and I don't really want to put the additional money into this vehicle. I don't
So
know
we're
that
just
it's good
gonna
money.
take it out of service.
Take it out of service, and if 8 starts to have issues, we'll cannibalize 10 for it, but it doesn't seem to make sense to start putting 13, it may go 15.
But, right, yeah, I'm certainly agreeable to taking it out of service and replacing it with 8, but depending on what it needs for parts, cannibalizing 8 may not get you where you think you're gonna be.
No, it
because
would
of
be taking 10 out of service.
Right.
If 8 needs parts, take it from 10, not
Right.
put anything else
But
into
depending on
10.
what 8 would need for parts, you may
As-
not be
as long
saving
as-
anything because of the labor involved, and decommissioning 10 further.
Right,
So,
True.
I'm all for
We'll cross
taking it
that
out of
bridge
service.
when we get there.
And then dealing with it a little bit
as we
later.
come.
I'm curious to see what it needs, but that's from DePrizio's.
Yeah,
So,
and
okay.
we have investigated whether we look at staying with DePrizio's, looking at other options. DePrizio's is down to one DOT mechanic, which means that we're not getting a particularly quick turnaround on some things. Right now, we're not jumping ship, but we're exploring our options so that if we get stuck, we have
Yeah.
something else that we might be able to do.
Yeah, something to talk about after the meeting, because unfortunately in this area, those options have been
They are
actually dwindling.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
They're not been increasing.
I know.
I don't know, have we sent anything directly down to International on the new facility down on 125?
We haven't.
Just, I think it's in Barrington, isn't it?
We have not,
Okay.
and that may be.
And I don't have any feedback for that, from that facility, so
Yeah.
I don't know if it's...
And they have to have the school bus certification with the mechanic as well. It's not just so,
At one time, I'm not sure whether they did the school buses, but Dover had their internal own city mechanics doing the diesel work, and they would contract out to municipalities at a reasonable rate.
I can call,
That may be an option as well.
I will call Bill tomorrow and see if that's an option. Yep.
And
Okay.
I'd be curious who Rochester's using as well.
Yeah, I know sometimes they use Dover Motor Mart,
Okay.
but I don't know, I went by there the other day and I thought there was a different sign, to be honest. I'm like, yeah. Maybe I was mistaken, but,
Okay.
you know,
I will-
Rochester Truck has changed hands in the last few years, and that's, I don't know what their business profile looks like now.
We have rates from them. Yeah, maybe a little bit more, but maybe a little bit quicker. I mean, it kind of starts to weigh out. So we'll talk about more as the time gets closer that we might need to act on. But in the meantime, we're going to pull 10 from the road for right now.
Okay, moving on to reports, we have, where do you want us to start?
Well, we've got them in order there. Do you want to start with Valley View?
Okay, we can start with Valley View Community School.
Blake, are you on?
I am. Good evening, gentlemen. Just want to say we had a fantastic month at Valley View, even though the month's not over yet. The remote learning experience went very well. Following the holiday break, attendance was up far, and the students and families did very well over the week and a half that we remoted. I would like to thank everyone for getting on board with this experience and showing your support. We will be celebrating Valentine's Day at Valley View on Friday, February 12th. In order to follow proper quarantine procedures, we're asking students to bring their Valentine's Day cards in on Friday, February 5th, so that they can properly quarantine before they're distributed in bags for the students. For those students who are remote, the cards will be delivered to their homes on Wednesday, February 10th via our bus transportation for those that are unable to pick up their cards. The past weekend, a large group of stakeholders got together on a strategic design for the Farmington School District. Valley View was very well represented by both families and faculty, and I would like to thank everyone who participated in the process. It is greatly appreciated and will be very beneficial to our students. We will be sending home trimester 2 progress reports on Friday, February 5th. And our guidance counselor is encouraging families to check out the resources made available at the newly opened resource center at the Community Action Partnership, also known as CAP. Some of the information at the resource center includes programs that can assist with housing payments, fuel assistance, daycare services, food, and much more. If you have any questions, you can contact Mrs. Williams at her email address, awilliams@sau61.org, or you can call her at Valley View, which is 755-457 extension 1150. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Next, we have Henry Wilson Memorial School.
Mr. Castonguay?
I don't see Matt on at this time.
Okay. He may not be with us, and so
Okay.
you have his report in your,
Okay,
Packet.
do you have anything you want us to highlight in his report?
I think probably one of the big things is the grades 7 and 8 are doing a full day meeting with parents, or have put in special meetings with parents and students who are struggling, to make sure that they're making those connections, that they are working out a specific plan for students. And, they did have a few no-shows, but those who were able to sit down with the teams, I think it was a very, very productive time. So I appreciate the extra effort put in on all parties to make that happen and to really help the kids get where they needed to be.
Good, good.
So,
Tim?
quick comment on that, and that's outstanding. If we're seeing improvement with the way that Matt is rolling out his plan, is that something that district-wide we can talk about doing? And district-wide, probably more inclusive of the high school?
It's
I don't-
happening in a slightly different form at the high school,
Yeah.
but yes, I mean, it's, the high school has been doing, I don't want to steal Mr. Roberts'
No.
thunder too much, but they've been doing a number of home visits and have been meeting directly with parents in a number of different ways, rather than just the concerted effort this way. But at this point, it's whatever is working, we're going to keep doing it and replicate it in as many different areas as we can.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Okay. Moving next to Farmington High School.
And Paul is here.
Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Roberts, are you muted?
No, he's not muted. He might have stepped away, because I
Okay.
can see he unmuted himself.
Okay.
Well, we'll give Paul a second or so to get back on. So Ruth Ellen, you had furnished a report to us.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to go over or point to some things in that.
One of the things that I will point to, statistic that Mr. Roberts included, and I have the statistics for the other two schools. As of Friday, 41% of the student body was remote. That is now down to 34% because we have a number of students who were able to return this today. For Valley View, the remote percentage is 27%. For Henry Wilson, it's 29%.
And 34th High School.
And 34 at the high school. I believe that's what he'd given me. So that's an update from what you had on Friday. One of the things that they are looking to plan is a school-wide testing date for March 24th. That includes PSAT,
I can
SAT.
call back.
Okay, wonderful. Jump in anytime.
Well, I didn't know if I wanted to destroy the role there, but everybody can hear me now, I hope.
We can.
Okay. I think you might have said this, but we're at 242 people for in-person, 82 remote by choice. So basically 34% of the student body is currently remote. Right now, I think I've basically roughly around 23 or 24 home visits that I've done since the start of the new year. One of the things that Eric and I we've been meeting with groups of teachers, and these are the professional learning communities that are at the high school. First topic that we looked at was tiered intervention. We had Cassie Long, who works with Constellations, help facilitate these meetings. Currently, we're examining grading practices in the PLC groups. As we look forward, guidance and Jess Lovell, the ELO coordinator, are going to be working together to facilitating basically career exploration sessions. For freshmen and sophomores, we'll be using ONET's interest profile assessment so they can start exploring some of their career interests. We hope with this information we'll be able to introduce career clusters and New Hampshire career pathways in relation to the program of studies. For juniors, this is a program that they started last year. It's a free service. I believe it's called SCOIR, S-C-O-I-R.
I think it's SCORE.
Okay, SCOIR, okay, thank you. It's a college and career program that, like I said, they started last year. The first step is taking an aptitude assessment to give them best worst career matches based on strengths, weaknesses, and interests. The thing they like about the program is that it's very comprehensive. The downside is that it does require, it's lengthy, and we're trying to work out the best way to kind of do it in piecemeal sections, but to make it so it's a valid assessment. We are strongly encouraging seniors to take the ASVAB in March. ASVAB follows up with their own career exploration program. And again, we're going to strongly encourage them to take it. We realize some kids have already focused on college, but also there are kids that are still remaining undecided. And I think she mentioned, I think the thing I heard was that in March, on March 24th, is that we're in the planning stages for school-wide testing.
Okay.
And last thing, I just happened to remember this, and I forgot to add it into the board report. I do want to thank, there was a number of students that joined us for the strategic design event, along with a number of parents of high school kids that were there also. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to everybody for basically staying with the 3 days. And we had a lot of great conversation, and I'm really looking forward to when we start pulling things together to find out where the community would like to see us go. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Tim?
Paul, on your number of home visits that you did, are you seeing an impact on that, and is there anything that the board can do by policy or funding to make that a better process?
Are you asking me about the home visits? Because you kind of blanked out right at that point.
I'm asking you about the success of your home visits. Do you feel that there's been an impact, or do you feel that we as a board need to help you by doing more?
Well, I know some of the places that I've visited, we actually now have students in the building now.
Okay.
So I'd say that probably was that probably helped. It's hard to say simply because everybody is in a different spot. The pandemic has put some unbelievable strains on a lot of these families, and in many ways they're trying to figure out, as we all are, how to navigate through this. I'll definitely do some thinking about it, Tim, and I got a feeling this probably will be something that we'll discuss some more. Off the top of my head, I'm not positive as to what would help, but please give me some opportunity to think about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Anyone else with questions for Paul? Well, again, Paul, I'd like to thank you for your report and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Ruth Ellen, you want to go back to anything in your report, or you want to move on?
Well, mine was more or less a highlight of as we're going through the agenda, so
Okay.
just to kind of not come up with anything new and surprising at the point that we got to those agenda items.
Right, so if you want to go to the next, under old business, grade analysis?
Sure. the same information that you had in the packet previously, just to kind of give some perspective as you looked at the colored sheets that were provided for you.
That being in the last month,
That was in the last board report, right?
okay, so that would be in
I did not pull those forward.
January.
That was in the 11th, yes.
11th meeting,
Yeah. Or did I not pull those forward? I guess I didn't pull those forward. Apologize.
grade analysis. Yep,
Yes.
in the first folder.
Right. So, you have the bold bar report and then the thin horizontal bar report. The bold one is for the remote class alone. So it gives you where students were. Green means that they are fully at or above proficiency benchmarks. Blue, they're pretty much right there. Yellow requires intervention, red urgent intervention. So in looking at these, our remote students as they test, if you look in comparison to this is for,
It's first grade class.
first grade class. This is reading early literacy. This one's solid green. This one has a fairly wide red and yellow bar. This is the entire first grade class together. This is just that remote class. So it kind of gives you, in comparison, our remote classes are doing very well there. And where you see at or below percentiles, those that are in yellow or those that are in blue for the benchmark are still less than half a grade level behind. They are, so where they would be expected to be at maybe 3.2 at the point that this test was taken, they were maybe at 2.8 or 2.7. So they're still close to the third grade benchmark.
So if we move to the third grade class,
You do have some students there that are showing,
so is there one that's fully remote?
so for this class, the third grade, the entire class is remote. This is showing you versus the entire third grade. So these are the remote students versus the whole grade together.
So what are the numbers on comparison? Like the grade 1, we're looking at 12 students remote. Grade 3, we're looking at 14 remote.
Right.
What's our in-person numbers?
So the in-person numbers there are, let's see, 2, 13, 3, so that's 18 and 33. It's 51 students
In person?
in person.
Okay.
So some of the students there, and obviously I can't go through and tell you, this one has an IEP, this one does not.
You're
this-
still on the third grade?
These, both the remote and the in-person do include students who have IEPs as well. So
Yeah.
it's not disaggregated data, it's together.
But is it proportionally similar or disproportionate? Meaning, are there students, is there a higher ratio of students with additional needs remotely or in person, or similar percentages?
The higher the grade level, the closer the percentages become. I need to be careful not to say too much because we have a fairly small sample here.
Yeah.
But So as you get up into second and third grade, you have more students who are remote who may also be identified. The lower grades, there are fewer, proportionately.
I mean, overall, on the remote at Valley View, I'm seeing good results, which I would kind of expect at that level. And it's typically, as we watch our grading district-wide, we see students do very well in Valley View. We start to lose some at the middle school, and then we lose some more at the high school as we're going through that process. I guess kind of my feel until we get direction from the state on how we can spend this money is I would like to look at, where our high points are, where we can get better, and with funding available, what can we try to accomplish in making that switch?
Certainly, targeted interventions are a priority in whatever gets spent coming up.
For us or the state?
For us. I
Okay.
mean,
I would agree with that. I didn't know
us.
if that was something coming into funding as a requirement.
the state has, the federal guidance has said this is what we'd like to see happen. It's now an included, yes, you can spend here, where it was not necessarily carved out per se with the first round of funding. But as we're looking at our needs, we know that that's something we want to do. Looking to see what's the best way to get that targeted for the kids, because even though you may have 5 kids in front of you who are remote and struggling, the needs aren't the same. So I can't just roll out the same program for all 5. So really looking to see how we differentiate that as well. And then make sure that we have the means to get that to the kids, whether it means they come to us, we go to them, we, find a neutral site. How do we do that? Is it electronic? Is it in person? Is it hybrid of that? We have a lot of options in front of us, and I want to make sure that we do it well.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion regarding the grade analysis?
Can we include this in the minutes?
The graph.
Yes, they are disaggregated enough that yes, I can.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to FFCRA guidance.
Yes.
FCRA, which stands for,
Family First Coronavirus Response Act.
yeah, I would have failed that one.
I've had to say it a few times to get it down myself.
So that information was in our last board packet,
Yes,
which was the...
the 11th, and
the
it was
11th.
also moved forward for this one as well, I believe.
Was? Are you sure?
I'm not, so if you're still in the 11th, go ahead and grab it. I won't swear to that, Charlie.
I might have stepped over it, but
Okay.
I went to the last
Okay.
week's.
The federal guidance that was FCRA expired on December 31st. The extension that has been made requires us to provide time, but does not require us to provide the pay that had been involved.
Can I stop right there at a point of
Go
order?
ahead, Tim.
This is something that's going to benefit potentially or address our entire spectrum of employees, of which we have 3 bargaining units. If we're going to talk about anything outside of the contract, I think that should happen and be tabled over to non-public.
Because you're saying this is,
It's potentially a negotiable item. I mean, we can't, in my mind, we have a contract with the teachers, the paras, the janitors. We just can't say, hey, we're going to give you this without going through a negotiation process. And I think that's better, that discussion's better served in non-public.
Your thoughts on that concern, Ruth Ellen? I mean, because in some ways, we would be saying we're going to do it for this group of people, or that group of people, or all the group of people. Because we have, I assume, we have liberty to do, because we're providing an additional benefit, but
Right,
we're also in a contract, so,
So what I would say is, back in March, the board agreed that we would make sure that we would keep people paid. I'm not suggesting
Right.
that that's where we go here. What I am suggesting is that we allow all employees to,
But my point of order on that is we can't have that all-employee discussion in public session, because it has to do with reopening a contract and providing a benefit. We just can't do that unilaterally.
if you provide the same to all,
Yes, we can't do that. It's an employee benefit based on they're the sole bargaining unit for their particular area. We can't do it. We can do opening renegotiations, but this discussion, in my mind, shouldn't be happening here.
so if you take the inverse, we can't take away any benefits without opening a contract, and this, we're extending a benefit, even though they may not take issue with it as a grievance, because it would be a positive, but if it was a negative, they could take exception to it. But this being a potential positive, they may not, but, I mean, I think Tim's concern has some validity, if not to what degree. Go ahead.
It's not a benefit that's contracted, it's a benefit that comes from the law, so it applies to everybody. It's a public discussion on what do we want to do. It's not a private thing. We can't hold contract over it. That would be unfair, I think. We can't hold this as a contracted benefit, but it's not coming from us.
It was a benefit provided by law that expired on 12/31. Once we fund it as a school district, it becomes a benefit of the school district. I disagree with you, Stan. The law is no longer in effect. We're asking to provide our employees with a benefit that we're not required to provide by law. That's where it's an unfair labor practice to do it in public session, but I made my objection.
well, and if you look at the first line of what I had said,
Go ahead. In the memo?
in the memo, on the last paragraph, the first line up to as allowed by the extension, it really doesn't change anything that is in any of the current contracts. So, again, you can discuss it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question with Ellen in public.
Okay?
If we were to decide to not continue with this benefit that we're no longer required to do by law, what is the adverse effects
Well,
specifically? I mean, we have 100 teachers, we have how many
Right.
paras?
about 46, 47?
46.
Okay.
So, and custodial staff, it's a bargaining unit
If we
is
have everybody in, it's 14.
14?
Support.
Support staff doesn't have a bargaining unit, but that's probably another 12 or 13.
So there's a group of almost 200 people.
So with this, you're not required to pay. You are required to provide the time. Allowing people to use their accrued time is not necessarily different from what they would be doing. If you say, there is nothing here, then people would have to take whatever accrued time they had, and that would be all they could have.
Right, which is sick time, personal days, vacation.
Vacation for those groups that have it, right. I'm not
Right. Not all groups have the
suggesting
same-
right, they
right.
don't all have the same accrual, time, rates, what have you, and that's per bargaining unit. Yep. Yeah.
And so what case specifically this regarding to somebody that needs to be out of work because,
So the 6 reasons that they were allowed to access FCRA in the first place was being subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order, having been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, and that's usually because of an exposure, experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and seeking a medical diagnosis, so that's the interim period of I'm sick, now I have to wait for a test, caring for an individual who is subject to an order described in the first or second, caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed or child care provider is unavailable due to COVID-19 related reasons, and then 6, experiencing any other substantially similar conditions specified by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We have had no one claim 6. So really it was only 1 through 5 that even was an issue.
because I was going to have you cite me an example of 6, but
Yeah, no one.
we haven't had one yet.
We haven't had a 6 at all. So, really, I guess, in bringing this up, and specifics can certainly be discussed in non-public, I understand portions of what Tim is going for. My concern is if we do not allow people to at least use their accrued time for instances that are cited here, I don't want someone to come to work when they should be in quarantine.
Right.
I don't want someone to come to work and try to mask their symptoms.
Right, but our policy currently now, wouldn't that allow them to use their accrued time?
It does, yes. Yeah, and
So-
I'm
so
looking
if
for
we-
a reaffirmation
if-
of that under those, this is what we're looking to do.
Right, but if we did not continue with this benefit that we were required to, people could still use their accrued time if they got into this situation.
The difference is that per policy, if an individual right now has 3 consecutive days out sick, they're required to have a doctor's note for that. Now, they may have a positive test result, but not a doctor's note. So the policy says you have to have this. That wouldn't line up here. They may or may not actually see a physician to get a
Right.
positive COVID result.
But that's something in an interim, based upon the pandemic, we could waive that requirement.
Yes, you could, but that also requires this discussion to get that waived, or a discussion that is similar. That's all.
Is that,
What are other things that we may have to consider that a policy in place to, whether or not we continue this or not?
Right.
Are there other policies that we would have to amend, suspend, or revise?
I think that's the principal one. Right now, we have, staff are allowed to use sick time, whether it's for themselves or for a child. What it doesn't specify is if they have a childcare issue, they may not be sick, the child may not be sick, but if the daycare is now closed, where does that leave them in limbo? Because most don't have more than a handful of personal days. And not all bargaining units have vacation time that they have that as discretionary time. So again, those are pieces that do get into some of the contract language, and I'll stop there, but that may be where those would need to be discussed.
Okay, I don't know if I've got any other questions that would suit the public portion. Anyone, the discussion on this before we may continue this in non-public? Okay, not hearing any. We're moving on to new business. The first thing on our list is request for early release days, or early personal development days, February 10th and April 14th. Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
Okay, we do have an early release day coming up this Wednesday, and we knew that that was certainly not enough notice for families. As we've looked at what's working, what's not, particularly in light of our grading analysis, our review of how are we assessing students, what do our grading practices do for us, what is our attendance, what is our engagement. We know that we have pieces that we already have on the plate that have to happen. But along with those, knowing that these are additional conversations that really need to be worked into what we're doing. And the early release days give us effectively an hour and a half to 2 hours to tackle some of these pieces. We're looking at wanting to add February 10th and April 14th, currently scheduled as half days, as full professional days, so that we can go back and really hit those pieces and continue the work rather than trying to continue to piecemeal. I have put up in the board folder kind of what the plan would be, what it would look like. So adding those discussions to what we already had planned so that it's a full day, it's professional development for staff. And paras would be included in a good portion of this. They also have additional pieces that Medicaid has shifted its whole structure yet once again, and Diana also needs time to go back through with paras on what some of those new platforms look like.
So the paras would be scheduled for the same time or less time?
The paras would be scheduled for that full day as well. There are other pieces that they need to be working on. Some of this will include the paras. As we're looking at executive functioning for students, that's something that paras work with students on in conjunction with the teachers. So that would be something they would do together. There are a number of the choice opportunities that we work in here, because we try to also make opportunities for teachers to say, here's what I need, while we are also going through and saying, and here's what everyone is going to be doing, so that we have a little bit of both, so that teachers can say, okay, I've got this part, now I need this other piece to be able to put that together. So there is one of the blocks in here gives them time to be working on professional development of their choice, and then the rest of it will be guided by administration, both from building and
So now by a contract, say with the teacher's contract, what is considered the full day?
They come in at
Is it
7:30.
Is it 7.5 hours?
It's 7.5 hours, yes.
Okay, because this only is 7 hours.
So as they're coming in at 7:30, this is where typically there's building level pieces
Okay.
in the morning. They
So
would
there's
still be
other
reporting at
stuff-
7:30.
Other stuff
Yeah.
outside of the schedule?
But this would be where the district level pieces come in.
Okay.
Yep.
Tim?
How is this any different than what was in the contract in last March, the teacher's contract?
What was in the contract, teacher's contract last March was going to give us 2 hours each week that would give us ongoing time that we would have been able to work into.
And was that an early release on Wednesday?
That was a Wednesday early release.
And this is what day of the week?
This is Wednesdays, but it's 2 days. It's not every Wednesday is short, it's these 2 days are just,
So the proposed contract last March wasn't a full day?
the proposed contract last March that didn't pass had a 2 hour early, or it was essentially a 1 hour early release each Wednesday.
Okay.
That the teachers were going to stay an hour later. And so we'd have 1 hour shorter
Okay.
for the students and an hour later for the teachers.
So this process here is different than what was proposed to the taxpayers that they voted down?
Yes, it is. This is taking 2 early release days and making them full days. That's it. This is not changing the full calendar. This is just allowing us to do some course correction rather than waiting until June
Right.
to really get in there and get it done.
But if we're losing this, say, one full day of education, where is that going to put us far as educational requirements that we have to meet on a state?
We have anywhere from 5 to 15 days, depending upon the grade level, more built into our, actually, it's 7 to 15 days, more built in than we are required to have by law.
Okay.
So
At this point, we're not going to shortcut any
we're
requirements that
not
we have,
shortcutting requirements at all.
and we're extending 2 previously scheduled half-days to full days.
Correct.
I guess, initially, I'm not opposed to this. I think that there's merit to do it, so.
I'll just get one more question.
Tim?
Correct me if I'm wrong, the teacher's contract requires 180 days of teaching and 5 days of professional development, correct? So are these counted as 2 days of professional development?
They would have to, right?
These would count as professional development.
Okay,
So-
so we, with the 2 days that we're shorting our students in scheduling, are those 2 days being added on as teaching days at the end of the year? That would normally occur when they were doing their 5 days professional development?
It would only be 1 day, because they were already half-days.
They were half-days.
So it'd
Okay.
be 1 day. But are we going to be over on the professional development or under, or?
We
and
might be
one-
potentially over on the professional development. I can go back and have the conversation and make sure that we're not.
Under on the educational?
Educational, I know it's whether or not we'd need to add that back in so that they'd have the other day at the other end, which is potentially what we'd have to do. Yep,
If they agreed to it.
if they agreed to it.
Or what have we done so far as professional development on the teachers? What is the current hours that have been dedicated for that so far? Is these 2 days going to put us over that 5, or we still have additional professional development past that?
We do have we have one more full day scheduled in May. If that were swapped
So
as
making a
a,
decision on these 2 would not put us over, and
if we
that,
swapped out the full day in May to take these 2 full days now.
well, that would have to be worked out.
Right, it would need to be worked out. So, I mean, I can bring that back to you next week.
I'm not opposed to it, I just don't want to see, particularly in a year of a pandemic where we have a segment of our student body that are having difficulty, I don't want to take a day away from them on educational purposes. But
Stan or Josh, your thoughts?
I think it's a good idea. I think that the students working on projects or whatever on that day, they wouldn't necessarily lose a day if some activities were planned for them to do on those Wednesdays.
Josh?
I'm fine with it as well.
So I'll make a motion to approve the request for early release professional days for February 10th and April 14th as requested to make those full days.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
One opposed. Next, we have something Ruth Ellen wanted to have on our agenda. As far as February vacation, whether or not this board was in favor, not in favor of having remote time after this February vacation, which is 1 week.
It's 1 week, yes.
And the biggest thing is to get that decision made sooner than later for notice to the teachers and the parents and students.
Right. Following Christmas vacation, or when the decision was made to go remote following the holiday break, the majority of feedback that principals and I received was not that parents, well, I had 2 who weren't happy about the remote at all, but the rest were, hey, we don't disagree with the decision, we just wish that you had 3? Okay.
No, I'm saying you can add me to the list.
Okay. Okay. But we wish we had had more lead time knowing that that was going to happen. And so knowing that that's the case, and we've had some questions asked, is this something that's happening after February break as well? I said, I can put it on the agenda. I don't know that that's the plan, but certainly if the discussion is going to be had, trying to make sure that families know as soon as possible that that could be in the offing. So that's where that came from.
Okay.
I will say that the majority of the cases that we saw both after Thanksgiving and after this last holiday break, of course, we weren't in right after Christmas this time, but it tends to be the 2.5 to 3 week point where you start to have the wave of the wave, and then it starts to get larger. That's what we saw before Christmas, and we did see a wave after we came back. It wasn't nearly as large as leading up to Christmas, at least within the schools. But we have had, I have staff who are in quarantine now. I have students who've been positive. I have staff who are quarantined, some due to contacts that we know are school and some due to contacts that we're not 100% sure, but that's where we are, so.
Okay, discussion by the board. I'll start. I had the opportunity, I was listening to the radio Monday morning. I was going into work about a little after 7, and the governor was on one of the radio stations, and he specifically was talking about education. And I listened to his thoughts, and, I agreed with what he said. It's important for kids to be in school as much as possible, and he kind of reaffirmed some of my concerns and thoughts, and I don't really see the need to do this for a February vacation. That's my opinion. Anyone else? Tim?
I agree with you. I think that the more we have our kids remote, the more we're doing them a disservice. I think that mental health issues are widespread in students that are forced to stay home all day. I think that test scores and education quality as a whole goes down as the rate of kids that are remote goes up.
I mean, we have some kids that are remote are doing well, but that's by choice. But when we force it upon them, it may not be the best situation. Tim?
I think if we go remote, the message we're sending to the public is go ahead and travel. Our schools are closed, and you can quarantine after the fact, and I think that's a bad message to send. Everybody's saying the safest place is here. If we do have parents that are going to travel, we have a mechanism to keep the kids out of the school voluntarily, and I think the kids that want to be in school are being punished when we encourage people to travel because they're being forced into remote. That choice is no longer there for that segment of the population, and I'm opposed to closing down.
Stan? Any thoughts?
I think it's good practice to do the same thing, especially when there's travel involved and during a pandemic, so I would opt for the remote after vacation.
Okay. So I will make a motion to continue our current practice right through and after February vacation. So we would continue to, we're on the same path we have now. Voluntary remote and in-school education, and not take a full remote break after February vacation.
I'll second that.
I know that could have been a lot cleaner.
We'll work on it, Pam.
Sorry.
So pretty much, I mean, you could almost do the same thing by just not making a motion to change anything.
Well, I want it to be clear, a motion of the board, that the
Okay.
decision has been made. Not saying it couldn't be revisited if we had a huge spike or issues, but if we had a huge spike, we may need to close. I think things have been not as low as we'd like, but it's been consistent even though we've had ups and downs. It hasn't been wild swings, my opinion. We did have some issues around the holidays. And the infection rate is certainly higher now than we'd like, and it's been lower,
Yeah,
but it's not at its highest.
staying right about 30 active cases,
Right.
29, 28.
You know, we've been in the 20s, we've been under 10. We had a spike to, 55 through the holidays. For various reasons. And I don't think any of those reasons were related to, my opinion, people traveling outside the area or had to do with school. I think it was just, got into this community and people weren't as cautious as they possibly could have been. Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Stands opposed.
Just want to can I make a side comment on that? And I get the safety concern about families traveling. And there'll be a certain percentage of our student population that will travel during February vacation. Can we put a reminder out prior to that
Oh, absolutely.
while we're not encouraging you, if you do, you are required by law to quarantine for the 14 days.
Actually, it's
And we
10
will
now.
10 now.
Yeah.
And we'll accommodate that by pre-registering for remote so that we don't get that surge of remote from the people that chose to, violate the recommendations. We're prepared or ramped up for that. And maybe a lapse period of when the principals need that number by.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. Discussion and quote review for electrical work on a generator.
So
We did have some,
Go ahead.
before you get started. Don't take this personally, about ready to rip the rug out from underneath you, so. We did go out and get some quotes that I really don't think I want to discuss, and I'll give you a couple reasons. One, I believe this board, probably prior to Brian being here, we adopted a policy regarding RFPs. Did we not? That
This-
required them to come to this board to be reviewed or...
This wasn't a full request for proposal. This was ballpark quotes to get an idea of where the discussion would start.
So I think based upon some of the numbers that we've seen, I think we need to go out for a full RFP.
And that was certainly what the intent was.
Right.
We're
So-
just looking at, okay, here's the ballpark to start the discussion. Now, what
Right.
is it that you would,
But if we're going to go out for full RFP, what was sent to us really shouldn't be part of the discussion. Because these
got it, yeah,
people may requote our request for a proposal that the
Right.
board should approve, may be structured differently. and
will
ask-
likely be structured.
And ask for different things.
Right.
So I think that we should, for me, I think staff should draft up a RFP and for us to approve and comment, because I've got some things I'd like to add to it or consider at least some caveats of finding out where the costs are and where some of the strengths are and where we may need to backfill. Because looking at some of the budgetary numbers, that's not where we want them to be.
So I guess what I would say, if you have specifics that you would like to see in an RFP,
Right.
if you
I
can
can
give
certainly
us
forward
that,
this.
give us that guidance and that, maybe
Right.
that's the discussion. What are we looking at for the RFP? And then we can draft and get it back to you. But if
Yeah.
you already know what you want to see,
Well,
let us know.
I've got some ideas. I think that, I know we talked about a couple sites initially. Some people said they didn't want it. I think it's important in this because of the potential cost and the skill set of the outside contractors. We're gonna need RFP. We're gonna need a site walk for those RFPs.
Do you want to bid both potential placements?
I think we need to have it open. Somebody may say this is the better one, that might be the better one, they're gonna put associated cost. I don't necessarily wanna say to a contractor that says, I think that's where I want it, when he's like, there's all these reasons you can't do it there, you need to do it over here.
Right.
But to say these are where we consider two viable options, this is what's being supplied, we have some stuff that's being donated, and depending on what we ask for questions, we may find some areas that we can assist with other skill sets, like for instance, like say if the excavation, the pad purchase and setting becomes a large component of that because it's not really their expertise, then we can maybe split that off and find a more economical source for that portion. You know, not that I really want to get into the nuts and bolts of micromanaging.
You want to be a general contractor?
But looking at some of the cost, we gotta get it more in line with what we expected. And I think that if we put out a formal RFP and giving enough caveats and then putting out enough notice to people in the immediate area and others that we feel might have a skill set in this, so that we do like any other RFPs where we have a general RFP, but then we do it targeted to a list by the board saying, okay, we have these contractors that we know have experience, we have these contractors that are local and may be competitive, may have the skill set, and then we have others, which may be referenced to, you know.
I mean, it's
where
going to
we
be an
directly-
open bid process anyway.
Right.
So,
But
but there may be
also-
some that are invited to bid.
Right, because, you know, typically contractors are not always looking for additional work. So if they're not made aware of it, they may have bid, but they weren't aware of it because they weren't out on, say, some forum at that time because they were busy with the job today and looking at this job, which is projected to be next year,
Right.
next spring. So they may say, yeah, that's something I want to put my hat in the ring next year. I'm too busy to look at it right now, but.
Yeah.
Because they may say, you know, I want to book my schedule, make sure I got, you know, solid book schedule, and this is something that I can be competitive at. So that's why I think we should go on that, and maybe I can certainly furnish my thoughts, and maybe at the next meeting we could have a draft RFP, and then to see.
Do you have any contractors you want to add to the list that you know of?
I'll put those in writing. There's a couple. I mean, we have 2 in town that may have the experience and expertise to do that I know of. I don't know. There may be another master electrician that can do this. You know, there's also people that work specifically with generators as part of their electrical service. I know my electrician I use, he does quite a bit of that. I don't know if he would bid or be competitive, but I know he does that portion. So, and up to this size, but whether or not, you know, but there's other people that work in this area than some of the people we contacted. And I think we got to be as open as possible so that we can come as close to where we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess my question is, are we putting it out too far in advance to get solid bids? Do we need to wait? Because, I mean, it's more than a year in advance.
Right. Yeah,
and that I don't know.
That's a good point. I mean, we could basically be looking for a
rough order of magnitude, and then.
Yeah, and we could say that basically this will be, you know, we've got to give some, because some of these materials are volatile in the cost, and we may need to ask for an estimate more than a firm fixed price.
Right.
And then,
Because the market may shift.
I mean, maybe we do a preliminary where we narrow it down to 3, and then when we get closer, we can budget based upon, say, what we see in the lowest 3, or the lowest 3 that we feel qualified, and then we can say, at this point, we're going to come back to you and say, okay, and that those numbers may not be public, because if we go back for a final quote, say 3 months out.
Right. Then
You
that
know.
would be the formal RFP that would be.
Yeah, so
publicized.
we may not want to disclose those numbers, because some people would say, well, okay, I'm going to change my number because they know what the other one's bid.
Right.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
there's still some thought.
We're going to have to be careful with that because we want to make sure that it doesn't.
Or we go for a price and then we say, we'll consider price adjustments if you can justify it. Tim?
Before we jump in next week, we've got 50,000 in an existing capital reserve that we're looking at, and we're looking to add another 50,000 to that. Without getting into the numbers, you guys know where the numbers are falling. So instead of doing all this work now, do we wait till after the election? Because the taxpayers could very well say no.
No, that's a good point. We may want to wait a little bit before we get a little bit
Yeah.
closer to that date.
Wait a month and a half and then make sure that we know what's going into
Yeah.
that account first.
Yeah, and what's manageable, because if they say no, then, I mean, we can't do it, and they could very well say no.
And I want to be careful, too, that we don't push this off so much that
Right,
you say no down the road, and Oyster River's stuck with a generator, that
right.
somebody else has to go through the same process that we're going through right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe after the election, I think we need to be on it. We need to get some feedback. And maybe that first step is more
Right, right
request,
now
more maybe a request for proposal, which defines a rough scope and we help us finalize target area, target entrance into the building, whether it's above ground, below ground, over by the pole, in this paved area.
Yeah.
One of the contractors could come up with an alternative site which mitigates the cost that we haven't considered. That's why the more people that we can look at it with experience, we can at least beat it down to the best.
Because right now in the capital reserve, we have sufficient to purchase the generator, just maybe not to hook it up.
Yeah, it's.
And I'd hate to, okay, we'll get it, we'll bring it up here, and here it sits.
Looking at the information provided so far, I'm scratching my head and going to be asking some questions. Tim?
But I think it's a doable project if the taxpayers say, okay.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll pick that up at the next meeting, if it makes sense.
Maybe just start crafting, just not send it out
Yeah,
yet.
I'll start getting my thoughts together.
Okay.
Um,
So we're not necessarily tabling that for the next meeting, we're just, or do you want a draft for next meeting? Because we
No,
have,
no.
I mean,
Okay.
we could take a month to do it. I mean, it'll be better when
Right.
it's a better
Yeah.
project.
it really would because we have deliberative Saturday.
Right.
So I'm just kind of thinking
We're
ahead
gonna be a little
too.
busy, too.
Okay.
And before we go, well, actually, do anyone else have any new business?
This may not be exactly new business. I just want to clarify, we have been extremely fortunate in our weather patterns. We do have predictions right now that next week could start to get a little bit dicey. And I just want to clarify to make sure that we are still looking at, if we have a snow day, it's a snow day, not a remote day.
My thought hasn't changed. Anyone
Okay.
else from the board? I mean, we might have, we've had one snow day.
We've had one snow day.
Typically, you say we typically have 3, maybe 5.
Yep, the high has been 7, the lowest has been 3 since I've been
There we
here.
go, a 2-week blizzard.
Hush, hush.
No, I'm okay with it. I think that to do it correctly, we would need to firm up our policies and procedures and expectations of staff, at least for what, and I don't think we're ready to do that. And I don't see the urgency to do it, if it's only 1 day or 2 days more, because we have the cushion as far as the days educationally.
We do.
Anyone else?
I think the last snow day we had was appreciated by everybody. I didn't hear any negative impact, and let's just, it's something we can look at in the future, but again, I don't think we're there now.
Yeah. I think depending on a storm event, those parents and teachers and students, they get busy with other stuff that, until they can go out and play in the snow. I mean, there's chores that come with, a foot of snow.
Yes, there are, and that's something that our
I mean, I like to play in the,
custodial crew has been
Right.
awesome about.
I like to play in the snow with the best of them, but I have chores to do before I can go do that. People need to,
You gotta get the
out and
sled
about.
out of the garage, yeah.
Public participation. Jen, do you have anyone?
Sarah Amakia asked if you could please clarify the vote that was passed on early release days. Will February 10th and April 14th be full ED days, no students, or full academic days with students?
Roselle?
My understanding of the motion was
Right.
that they are full professional development days without students.
Yes, as you
Okay.
proposed. Yeah.
Okay. Did that clarify?
She said yes, thank you.
Okay. Just want to
Okay.
make sure
Is there
that
anyone
I
else
understood.
that would like to share anything with the board? Please do so now and announce yourself. Nope, I don't have anyone else.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Next meeting, you had potentially February 1st, which is next Monday.
It's next Monday. We typically meet the first and third. I know there's been nothing typical this year, but usually it's the first and third Monday. Next Sunday night through Tuesday is where they're saying we may have our next snow event, but we'll see if that actually happens. I wouldn't plan your board meeting to have or not to have based on a week's out of weather because it changes drastically. But
So it's predicted to be after Saturday morning?
it's predicted to be after Saturday morning. We should get Saturday out of the way unless you decide that you want to entertain anything from the emergency order 83.
Right. That was in our packet, so.
It was in your packet.
Maybe I meant to ask you about that. Now, maybe you want to give us a summary of that.
Okay. On Friday, Governor Sununu signed Emergency Order 83 that, along with another House bill that has yet to be enacted, gives the school board the authority to change the timing of deliberative and the ballot vote should they choose to do so. You have either the ability to do and the alternative options, which would be a Zoom or Google Meet for deliberative, and then there would be a drive-through voting session, and then the board decides where that's going. At this point, the board had decided that we're going to do just what we have done, just socially distanced. The other piece of this emergency order allows that ballot vote to be backed up to the first, I believe it's the first Tuesday in, second Tuesday in April, May, June, or July. And I would say if you were likely to move it, please don't move it to July because unlike the town, I don't have a mechanism to spend without a budget, so I have to run a July payroll. Let's not make it July. But if we were going to move that, you could move the ballot vote back a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then the deliberative would come with it accordingly. The warrant can't be changed. The warrant needed to be posted by today. Everything's posted. That doesn't shift. We don't get more time there. It's just if there were concerns, it could be backed up. This body could make the decision in consultation with the moderator and the clerk. Nothing that you have indicated thus far leads me to believe that that's something that you're looking to entertain, but I needed to at least let you know what your options were.
Okay, so I don't personally, or I have not seen any reason why we would want to use this. But you're saying we have the ability to, in consultation with the moderator, or he has the final say?
No, actually, on this one, it is the governing body of a town, school district, or village district in consultation with moderator and clerk. I'm on page 3, number 3, paragraph A.
Yeah, okay.
May postpone the official ballot voting day to the second Tuesday of April, May, June, or July.
All right.
May also postpone the business or deliberative session.
Okay. Okay.
So now it's this body that would make the decision. You would just need to get input from those other two. The
Okay.
moderator can postpone deliberative up to 2 hours prior, typically due to weather or some other event that would prevent it from happening. In the event the moderator moves it, it would need to be held within 72 hours of its postponement unless another event prevents. So if for some reason we couldn't do Saturday, it would need to be by Monday. If Monday we're in the middle of a blizzard, he could back it up another 2, but he can only go 72 hours at a time, leapfrogging backwards.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think that we need to take advantage of this, but I just wanted to be brought before the board. Tim, your thoughts? I think we're ready to go, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go, and the problem I see is our ballot in March is one election. It's school and town election, so if we were to move our deliberative, then we'd need another election down the line, and I just don't see,
It's a further
5 days out, I don't see that the benefit of doing that at the additional cost.
Any other board members with thoughts or discussion?
I prefer we keep it where it is.
Okay. So I guess, do we have anything else for public? I know Larry is here, waiting diligently. I figured he needed something. You sure? We got some more work to do. You want some?
You don't need a raise?
I'm happy.
Okay. That was easy.
That's got to be a non-public.
So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I'll make a motion and wish you a good night, and I'll make a motion to go into non-public session and under RSA 91A 2, A, B, and C, nominations and resignations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.